You're listening to Two Bobs, conversations on the art of creative entrepreneurship with David C. Baker and Blair Enns.
Okay, David, I guess this is a thing now. This podcast is live, right?
As far as I know, it is.
I mean, it's not live, but Marcus has put them online.
This isn't something that my therapist has asked you to do just to make me feel important and nobody's listening, but yeah.
We'll talk about your therapists, plural, in due time.
Yeah.
I thought we should, because we've never really done this properly, we should do an introduction. So I want to interview you briefly about who you are and why people should pay attention to what you have to say.
Yeah, this will be short.
If they should at all. So let's start with your business is called Recourses. What is Recourses? What do you do?
So it's a management consulting firm, and I work, because it's really just me, work with principals of small to mid-sized marketing firms, and been doing it for 23 plus years, so since 1994.
Okay, and so management consulting, small to mid-size, you said marketing firms, 20 years. How many firms have you worked with?
Goodness, I've kind of quit counting, but it's over 900 now, just because, and that's through the total business review process. So it's an on-site process where I do a lot of prep work and then visit with them in a very structured way for several days, then give them written recommendations, and then I'm around for several months helping them implement the changes that I'm recommending that they make. And so I do typically 2 to 4 of those a month. So if you add that up, I take time off, obviously, but so 2 to 4 a month, so about 40 a year, and multiply that by the number of years, it's more than 900 now. It's amazing that, it's amazing there are enough victims out there for me to keep doing this, but yes, many of them. Yeah. I'm usually coming in and cleaning up after you've worked with them.
And there has, there's been quite a bit of overlap. We've never really stopped to count it, but how many of these firms that you work with, I've also worked with as well. But maybe now we'll never count it, but it's curious.
Yeah. Well, because we used to do an event together, and so they would either work with you first or me first, or it's been good.
Right. That event was called the New Business Review.
New Business Summit.
Or the New Business Summit. I don't even remember the name anymore. It's purged from my memory because So you mentioned the core product for Recourses is Total Business Review. It is what it sounds like. But why? Like, why do people? Your phone rings, David. I need a Total Business Review. Why? What's going on?
Well, usually there's something that they can't quite figure out, and they've often tried solving it on their own. And they're looking for a couple of things, honestly. They'd like to not reinvent the wheel, so to speak, and or reinvent the flat tire, as I sometimes joke. They'd like to just get a head start on solving some of these issues, figuring that, hey, we can't be all that unique. There must be somebody out there that's worked through this before. So that's one thing they're looking for, is just some perspective. The other is they're looking for objectivity. So and I often tell them, it's like, you haven't really, I'm not going to see something for the first time. I'm not going to raise anything that you're not already aware of, and I'm actually not even going to pull any tools out of the toolbox that I haven't used before. It's just I'm going to use the tools in a new combination and try to help you focus on the most important things to solve and help you see how they're interconnected. So you pull this lever and what happens over here. And the big subjects that I'm usually working with them on are positioning and then lead generation. So that would be one. So they have a steady flow of the kind of business they want. The other is structuring roles, particularly their own role as the firm grows and changes. And the third one, these are the three big ones anyway, would be just understanding how to benchmark their firm's performance, what it means, how to impact it, change it, all of that.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and let's talk about you. Who is David Baker? And aside from the fact that you've worked with over 900 firms, I guess the question is now redundant. I wanted to say, why should anybody care or hire you?
Yeah, right. Did my clients ask you to ask that question?
All 900. I have a petition here.
Yeah. From change.org. So,
So tell us a bit about you.
I'm 57, so I was born in 60. I grew up overseas. My parents were medical missionaries. I came to the U.S. when I was 18 and married. Been married for 30-some years now. Have 2 kids, 2 daughters-in-law, multiple grandchildren. I just say multiple so that if I lose track of the number, I don't get anybody upset. And I was in graduate school for many years, as most graduate students are, I think. And about halfway through, I was just flipping through the newspaper one day and was looking at how much the ads sucked. And I just thought, goodness gracious, how hard can this be? I think I could probably do a better job than that. And I was a little bit dissatisfied with the job I was in to pay for my graduate school at the time. Even though I was a full-time student, I was working full-time too. So I thought I'll just start a firm. And so that was the beginning of a firm. This was in Indiana, northern Indiana. Did that for 6 years. And through a strange set of circumstances, fairly accidental really, and at someone else's suggestion, I began to help other agency principals. And when I let myself walk down that path, it just quickly overwhelmed my business life. And within just a matter of months, that's what I was doing full time. So it was a fairly accidental start. I'm not guiding agency principals because I was an amazing agency principal. I was a very pedestrian, average one, honestly. It comes more from just learning as much as I can by seeing the inside of other firms. So that's sort of the overlap between the personal and the business side.
Okay, and I know you fairly well. We've known each other for about I want to say 15 years or so, somewhere around there. I know you to be a really high achiever. Tell us about some of your. I think people will be interested to know some of your passions outside of work. And if you forget any, I'll list them off. But go ahead.
Yeah, right. Well, I really enjoy photography. My dad was an amateur photographer, and we didn't have electricity or running water where we lived, but we had this little generator, and we would run it every once in a while, a few hours every couple of days, so that I could use a Leica enlarger back during film days, obviously. And so I picked up a love of photography, and I still really do enjoy it. I take lots of trips internationally every year just to kind of get lost in my own photography pursuit. An airplane and helicopter pilot. That was more for business purposes, although we did use it a lot for personal vacations and so on. I love fine woodworking. That's it's one way I find that my hobbies have to be something that's so intense that it takes my mind completely away from business. I can't afford to be thinking about business when I'm doing some of these hobbies. So like if you slip up, you cut your finger off, that's a pretty good incentive to pay attention and not think about business.
Or crash a helicopter.
Yeah, that'd be another thing. It could wreck your day completely. I taught motorcycle high-performance riding and racing at the World Superbike School for a while, and have done a lot of motorcycle riding around the world. And so that's how I keep myself busy. I love reading as well. That's not a very dangerous hobby. Well, I guess some of the books are, but no, I do enjoy. I tend to throw myself all into whatever I'm doing. So if I'm on a racetrack, that's all I'm doing. If I'm consulting with a client, that's all I'm doing. I tend to be have somewhat of an addictive personality, really deep into something.
You're listening to Two Bobs, conversations on the art of creative entrepreneurship. Your hosts are David C. Baker of Recourses, author, speaker, and advisor to owners of expert firms, and Blair Enns of Win Without Pitching, the sales training and coaching program for creative entrepreneurs. For more information, go to twobobs.com. If you find this podcast helpful, please help us by telling a friend and rating us on iTunes. Thank you. Now back to David and Blair.
So you're basically a boring individual with no hobbies.
Yeah.
You mentioned books. You are both an author and a publisher. You're my publisher. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Rockbench and why you launched Rockbench and its purpose?
Yeah, that was in 2009, I guess. I had, for my third book, I had 3 written proposals from publishers as an author, and reading through them, I thought they were just ridiculous. It's like what they were requiring, the money I made as an author, how long the process took, how little they did any marketing. I thought, well, that doesn't make sense. And the publishing industry was really broken at the time. It's even more broken now. But self-publishing made no sense to me either. That's sort of like, I always thought of it as wearing sweatpants to work. It's like you've given up. There's you've completely given up. So I thought, well, there needs to be some sort of a hybrid path to this, and so we created Rockbench Publishing. You can go to Amazon and search Rockbench Publishing and see the dozens and dozens of titles we published, including your book, which is our bestseller. So that's my most recent books are published under that imprint, and we've been able to. Not all of the authors are clients. Some of them are not. And all of them have been really good for the authors, for their careers, and they're giving them a bigger platform, bigger presence. So it's been really fun to do that. I write primarily for myself in the sense that it really helps clarify for me what I think. Now, obviously, it has other benefits. It helps my career, but I find that it's just every time I write a book, I'm just so grateful for the effort and the precision that it requires. So I'm very excited about this next one. It's called The Business of Expertise, and it's a book that's very different than anything else I've written, and put a lot of work into it. I'm very proud of it. Can't wait to see it.
So the book is called The Business of Expertise: How Entrepreneurial Experts Convert Insight to Impact and Wealth by David C. Baker, published by Rockbench Publishing, and it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and a few other places. And you've got a couple of other books still in print. So one is Managing Right the First Time. Is that correct?
Managing Right for the First Time, right? For first-time managers.
Yeah. And the other one?
Is Financial Management of a Marketing Firm. It's a large textbook sort of a book. The ratios inside it are licensed to several software providers for this field, and it was really meant to fill a gap. There wasn't anything out there at the time, still isn't really. So I wanted to provide some sort of a benchmark source for principals of firms so they could get a sense of how well their firm is doing or how well their firm should do.
Okay, great. I wanted to ask you, I've gone longer already than I'd planned, but I wanted to ask you about the biases that you bring to your work. It's something I think a lot about these days, my own biases. As people are listening to us and maybe they're not previously familiar with us, are there things that they should know about you that they can, like filters that they might want to apply that you are aware of and keen to share?
That's interesting. I don't know that I've ever thought about that question exactly. I would say that I love small talk with people with whom I can have a deep conversation at any moment. So I despise small talk. Otherwise, I'm a deep introvert, for one thing. So I'm really drawn to substance of any kind. And I am very open to learning, and I really hate lack of substance, which is why I've struggled, honestly, with the marketing field, because so much of it is bullshit that I'm constantly like having these visceral reactions against what marketing firms are doing. That would be one. Another, I think, is I'm pretty much an anarchist. I'm waiting to join the movement until they're a little bit more organized, I guess. But I think it comes a bit from my parents, the kind of people they were, and the environment I lived in, which was very much a survivalist sort of mentality. I don't believe much in government interference in our lives. I'm okay with evolutionary forces. I'm a very caring person, but I also can be. I'm okay making really tough decisions, and when I compare sort of my own perspectives with perspectives of my clients, many times I wish they were more courageous. I find them sadly lacking in courage, and I try to, I guess, step alongside them and help them in that way, any way I can. But I do wish. I also, as I get older, I'm less and less afraid of consequences. So I feel more and more like we should all just do the right thing and not worry about the ripple effect and just let it happen, whatever that happens to be. I also find myself just totally committed to a particular direction in my life, even if commercially I fail and I have to live in a van by the river, like like the motivational speaker on Saturday Night Live. If that's what it takes, fine. I really am just totally committed to what I'm doing.
Wow, great. I want to wrap up with one final question. It's not a spirit animal. And it's not what would you, these are common questions these days, and it's not what would you tell your 20-year-old self. Can you articulate like a personal motto or philosophy that kind of guides you? Like, are you able to distill, like, and it's probably more than one, but is there something that comes to mind that makes sense to share?
I do think that my impact on the world is going to be mediated in very small ways through individuals. And while there are times when I'm lying in bed and wish for a larger platform, I think that's just sort of a natural human cry that we all have. But in the end, I feel like the impact I'm going to have is going to be on the people closest to me, and it will have very little to do with my business life, I think. So the conversations that I have, the stepping into situations that are messy, that's really what drives my life more than anything, I think.
So you think you'll be remembered not so much for the books that you wrote or maybe the actual the information that you passed on, but the experiences people had with you?
Yes, and I don't even know that many of those will occur from a business setting. I'm grateful for the business life I have and the impact I do have, but I have fairly low expectations for that. My expectations are more around my kids, my family, some close friends, and whatever else happens beyond that is just extra. It's just gravy, but I don't count on that too much. I think I just need to do what's right and keep playing the game the right way. But most of the impact I'm going to have is going to be from the people that I rub shoulders with constantly.
That's a great philosophy. It reminds me of Mother Teresa's, it might be an apocryphal story, I don't know, but her response to a businessman who said, "How can I change the world?" And her answer is, "Go home and love your family." Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And the beginning of the Managing Right book is that it's like, your clients are not going to remember you. Your vendors aren't going to remember you. I think the people that are going to remember you are the people that worked for you, and they'll remember what impact you had on their lives and their careers, and that's where most of the focus should be, it seems.
All right. Well, thank you very much for this introduction to David C. Baker and Recourses.
Thank you, Blair.
Thank you for listening to Two Bobs with David C. Baker and Blair Enns. Subscribe and learn more at twobobs.com. That's the number 2, BOBS.com.